Coming live from Fleetwood, North Carolina, USA is our guest this evening. Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dave Albin, CEO of Firewalk Productions, and he's empowering entrepreneurs, business owners of all sizes, helping them create the most powerful team, life changes, experiences in corporate America. And now he has got the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy is coming in October 2023. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hey, AJ, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Welcome to the show, and we'll be knowing more about this, trial by fire and how these things happen. So, we'll be talking about how all these things are helping in team building, creating a great team culture. But first, let me start from this. At 9 years, you were selling flowers on the streets, in a street corner.
I was.
And there was a time which was a difficult time, and you almost put an end to your story in 1988, putting a gun to your head. You were fed up of all the light that was at the moment. And today, the boy who was selling flowers at 9 is actually telling all the top entrepreneurs and business owners about team building, about building their team, not only their teams, but also their businesses. How do you look at this change from that spot in time? And tell us exactly, what exactly is team building about? A person who was not able to put his own things together is talking about team building. What has been your experience about team building, which a lot of people are struggling in today's corporate world, even in the relationships that they are forging in personal and professional lives? Help us understand what this team building is all about in your understanding.
Well, AJ, a lot of my information and knowledge and wisdom came from being immersed in the personal development industry. So yes, when I was 9 years old, I knew I had an entrepreneurial spirit there because my mother grew beautiful flowers in the backyard, and she helped me put those together. And I went out on the street corner and I sold them. And I probably learned more at nine years old about how to deal with people than any other time in my life. In addition to that, I had a paper route. So after school, I would collect my papers and go and deliver them to my customers. And so that also taught me about entrepreneurship and the business side of things, if you will. I lived across the street from a golf course. So I was working over there as well. People would hit the golf balls over the fence, and I'd go get them, and I'd either sell them the ball back through the fence, or I would just go find them and I would clean them up and I'd sell them in the parking lot to golfers who were coming in to go golfing that day. So I guess I learned at a very young age that there's money out there, go find it. And that led me to, again, where I am today as far as that goes. Now, yes, in 1988, I had a point of my life where I came to a reckoning. I was grossly addicted to drugs and alcohol. And that particular day on June 8th of 1988, that's when I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so I was really left with the only option I thought I had in that moment, which was to put a bullet in my head. Now, I started drinking and drugging at a very young age. Around 9 years old is when I also started drinking. I was adopted at the age of 5 years old. My biological mother, couldn't take care of me, and she did a very loving thing, and she put me up for adoption. And my aunt and uncle, her sister, actually adopted me. And that's when I was 5. When I was coming into 9, 10, 11 years old, my parents started drinking. And that's when my life changed and I took a hard right turn. And, the drinking led to drugs, and it led to hanging out with the wrong people. You name it. I was hanging around prostitutes and pimps and drug addicts and drug dealers and gang members. And again, and it just led to a really bad way of life. I got kicked out of high school when I was a junior. And, that really, I had very little hope, I guess, at that point in my life. And then again, on June 8th of 1988, after years and years of drinking and drugging, that morning was the turning point for me. So the only idea that I really came up with, again, to end the pain, because I was excruciating. My pain level was over the top, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And so I thought, you know what, if I put a bullet in my head, then it'll stop, right? And I wasn't thinking about anything futuristically, whether there was a heaven or hell or any of that. All I knew was that I wanted the pain to stop, and it was going to stop that day. And just before I got ready to, I put the pistol in my mouth. Just before I got ready to pull the trigger, I remembered, I'm married to a woman who's got 3 kids. And I thought, you know what, if you do that, those kids are going to suffer. You're going to kill them with you. And so in a moment of compassion, I thought, I can't do that. I cannot do that to those kids. It's just wrong. And so then the idea came, well, then what are you going to do? Well, then the idea came, well, I'll just call Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know what's funny about that, AJ, is I didn't even know who Alcoholics Anonymous or AA even was. I had no references for it. I didn't know anybody that was in AA. It just, the thought jumped in my head. Well, I made the phone call. And that was the last day that I ever took a drink or a drug. I got sober on June 8th of 1988. And this June coming up on the 8th, it'll be 35 years. Well, because I had insomnia and I was up late at night all the time, I was up late one night and I was watching an infomercial by Tony Robbins. And I'm guessing most of your viewers are going to know who Tony Robbins is, because he's probably one of the most well-renowned motivational speakers and corporate sporting coaches in the world. And he had a program and he was selling it, and I bought it. They sent it to me. And to date this, it came on little white things called cassette tapes, right? Many, many years ago. Well, I went through it and I did what the man taught me to do. And guess what? It worked. And then what happening in my life at that moment is that AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, putting my life back together, and then the personal development industry merged in my life at the same time. And it was really a pretty magical relationship. It was incredible. Well, I loaned my tape program to a buddy of mine. And he called me 7 years later after getting involved with Tony as well in his tapes and reading his books. And he called me on the phone 7 years later in 1995 and said, "Hey, Dave, guess what? Tony Robbins is coming to town and you're going with me." He said, "You got me into this. I want you to go. Will you go with me?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely. What's the dates?" And so the dates worked for both of us. And he literally said, "Okay, great. I said, let me call you back. I'll make the arrangements." And he literally called me back an hour later, AJ, and said, "All right, it's done. We pick up the tickets at will call. Here's what they told us to do. Drink a lot of water. Bring water with you so you're hydrated. Bring snacks because you're going to spend a lot of time in the room." Boy, was that an understatement. He also said, "Bring a good attitude and be ready to play full out." And I said, "Dan, how much was the ticket?" He said, $700. And he goes, "You can pay me back." And I remember thinking, well, okay, $700. Don't you worry. I'll play full out. And just as he got ready to get off the phone, he goes, "Oh, by the way, guess what? We're going to be doing a firewalk." And I remember thinking, well, maybe you are, pal, but I'm not going to do that. There's no way. Right. And you know what's funny, AJ? I didn't even know what a firewalk was in that moment. But here's what I did know. I'm not doing it. Well, I held up pretty well until the very end. We got to the event on that day about 2:00 in the afternoon. Tony took the stage. And 10 hours later, after midnight, he literally goes, "Take your shoes off." And now I'm not going to do it, right? I am not going to do this firewalk. And I'm going, yeah, but wait a minute. I'm looking around and everybody else is taking their shoes off. And my thought was, well, if I don't take my shoes off, then everybody's going to know I'm a chicken and I'm not doing it. And we can't have that, right? So I'm like, well, just take your shoes off and fake it. No one's going to know. So I took my shoes off. Well, then as he's got everybody going out there, right, he gets everybody chanting and clapping. So everybody's going, yes, yes, as you're walking out to this firewalk. Well, there's 3,500 people at this event. And then when you actually get outside, he's got African drummers. So it's really intense. It's dun, 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 dun. And so you get out there, and it's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. I am freaking out. So I'm like, well, I'll just go hide in the back. Nobody's going to know. Tony's got a big fire burning over here. It's huge. It's a giant fire. It's been burning all day. And what they do is they would keep adding wood, and it would just burn down and it would render. And then at the end of the night, they load coals in wheelbarrows, and then they pull a wheelbarrow in, and then they put 2 lanes of sod on each side of it. So it's about, 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. And then they would just take shovels and sprinkle the coals on top of the grass. And that's what you firewalked on. Well, I'm hiding in the back, which is, I thought, a pretty good strategy, which it's not. And here's the reason. Tony knows that if he takes you through that firewalk experience, it'll literally be one of the most life-changing things you'll ever do in your entire life. And he knows it. He knows how powerful it is because he studied it intensely. And so he doesn't want you to miss out. So what's he do? Well, he trains people to go get the cowards that are hanging out in the back. And sure enough, right? So I'm hiding out in the back, and the next thing I know, here comes this guy. And he made eye contact with me. And apparently Tony teaches him, look, when you make eye contact, don't take your eyes off of him, because this guy's now staring at me. And as he's walking at me, he gets about maybe 20 feet away, 15 feet away, and he's looking at me and he goes, hey, are you okay? And when we're not okay, what do we say? Oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm good here, man. Don't you worry about a thing. And he goes, oh, good. He said, hey, are you going to walk tonight? And I said, absolutely not. Like surprise, right? Like, didn't you know? Didn't you get the memo? I'm not firewalking tonight. And he was really good. He goes, well, that's okay, man. He goes, we don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And I remember thinking, wow, I like this guy. He's going to get me out of here. And then it got really interesting. And this guy, to this day, AJ, I don't know who this guy is. I'd love to meet him someday, because I wouldn't be here sitting on this amazing podcast with you if it wasn't for him. But he said, well, wouldn't you at least like to watch? And I remember thinking, well, yeah, I'd love to watch. Sure, let's go watch these people burn their feet off. This should be really entertaining. And he said, well, look, you can't see anything from back here. And he's telling the truth. I couldn't. I had 3,500 people standing in front of me. I couldn't see anything. I could hear them. They're all chanting, yes, yes. And the drums are going off. And as they're starting to walk, they're screaming, with joy and exhilaration. And, it's a scene like you can't even imagine. And so he goes, well, just get in line and eventually you'll get up there. Well, he was right. I got in line as I'm kind of chugging along here. Again, still can't see anything. This guy comes out of nowhere. And all of a sudden he comes up and he whispers in my ear. And he goes, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And then he just went, pooh. And he was like gone. He just disappeared into the night. And I was like, what was that? And so I'm walking along. All of a sudden I get to a point where I can't see in front of me, but I can see at an angle. And they're doing it, AJ. I'm watching them. Every race, creed, and color. People are walking on fire. And I'm totally blown away. I'm like, what? Why are they doing this? Metaphorically, what's the reasoning behind this? And as I'm staring at these people, I'm not watching in front of me. I'm just kind of moving along. And the next thing I know, guess where I am? I'm at the front of the line. And all of a sudden I look and I realize where I am, and I'm staring down at the coals, right? And the coals are on that lane of sod, that grass. And they're bright red, and there's a wheelbarrow there, and it's full of coals. You can feel the heat coming off. My heart is pounding out of my chest, and I'm staring into the abyss. Well, there's a trainer standing there. And all of a sudden the trainer goes, eyes up. Oh, and I'm like, oh, geez. Right? I bring my eyes up, right? Like, holy, like he screamed at me, right? Well, I was in a room for 10 hours with Tony. And guess what he teaches you to do? He teaches you to keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear in life. Keep your eyes up and look to the end game. Look to the end of the fire lane, because that's where the lesson is. That's where the change will happen. And so now my eyes are up, and he goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And so I kind of threw my hands in the air and I said, yes. And he knew I was leaving a lot on the table. He knew I wasn't in a peak state. So he screamed at me again. He said, yeah, stronger. And so now I'm almost angry, right? And I threw my hands in the air and I screamed at the top of my voice, yes. And he goes, go, go, go. And I took off. Well, here's the interesting thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, like metaphorically, kind of like life, oh, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth, right? You will not walk halfway out on that fire lane and stop. Well, he's got a couple of people at the end there that lock hands, and they stop you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating. And then it dawns on me that I burnt my feet really bad, right? And I lift up my foot and I look at it, my left foot, and it's dirty, but there's no burns. Well, it's my right foot. I lift it up, I look at it, it's dirty, but there's no burns. Well, wait a minute. What's going on? How did I do that? I'm not even going to do it. I already told myself. And I'm looking back, and so now I'm blown away. And I will tell you, AJ, right there on that spot, like other 3,000 people there, it was exhilarating. I felt like I could conquer the world. It was such a magical, powerful experience right there on the spot. Well, here's where it gets really interesting. And this is what got me to where I am today, was the next day. Now, this is a 4-day event for Tony, right? And on day one, we did the firewalk that night. Well, the next morning when I came in, we were all standing in the foyer, and I'm with 3,500 people. And I'd never seen or witnessed anything like it in my life. Humanistically, because people's frequency and their belief and their self-worth had been raised the night before, you ought to have seen how these people were getting together. All strangers. Nobody knew anybody. I knew my buddy that I came with, right? But people were laughing and they were hugging. Some people were even crying. They were so emotional about what they had accomplished the night before. And they were telling their stories, and it was unbelievable. To this day, I have never, ever seen or been around anything like it except for a Tony Robbins seminar. And so that was it. I found out later at the event that Tony uses about 300 people as volunteers. And one of Tony's trainers told me, he said, hey, if you want to get involved, when you get home, call Robbins Research. They'll send you an application, fill it out, send it back, and you might get chosen. That's exactly what I did. And I got chosen. And the next thing I know, I'm in Fort Lauderdale at a Tony Robbins seminar as a volunteer. Now, because of the information I filled out on the application, they saw I lived on a farm. So they're like, wow, this guy probably knows tools. He knows how to split wood, how to use a log splitter, how to do all this stuff, right? So they stuck me on the fire team, the fire building team, which is a team of about 60 people that are outside, throughout the whole day building this fire for all the participants. Because Tony can have, thousands of people at this event. My event was 3,500, but the events that I've done for Tony is thousands, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 people. In fact, I'll talk more in a minute here. The largest firewalk I ever did with Tony Robbins was in London in 2005. And we literally firewalked 12,300 people, which I believe is a world record. Now, I do want to disclaimer here, Guinness Book of World Record was not there. But to my knowledge, nowhere in the world has anyone ever firewalked 12,300 people except for a Tony Robbins seminar. And so after I got involved with Tony's companies, the other information on my application was I had a military background and a security background. So they put me on the security team, the security detail, to help take care of some of Tony's celebrities. And so that started. Well, a year later, I got hired as a subcontractor to start working for Tony. They hired me to become the assistant captain of the fire team. And they also put me on the security team as well, again, as I said, to help take care of a lot of Tony's celebrities. And that was in 96, 97. Well, in 2003, I was offered the captain's position for the Anthony Robbins companies, which meant that I would be in charge of all of Tony's firewalks globally in 2003. And in fact, when I was first offered the position, I said I can't. And the reason I couldn't is because I was homeschooling my kids. And so Tony offered to pay for my entire family to travel with us and with him on the road, which opened up to, my kids there. I'm homeschooling them. And all of a sudden they got to go on the road with me and Tony for all the firewalks. In fact, our first firewalk was in Sydney, Australia. So imagine being a child 6 years old, which was my daughter's age, and my son was 9 at the time, going on the road with Tony Robbins, and your first destination event is in Sydney, Australia, right? So it was pretty magical. So I worked for Tony starting in 96, became captain in 2003. We set the world record in 2005. And then in 2014, something else magical happened in my life. I was contacted by Google, and Google
Right.
got a hold of me and said,
Google searched, Google finally was able to find you.
yeah, right. Exactly. It was funny, AJ. I'm like, so how did you guys find me? What did you do? Yelp me? Right. And I had some fun with that as well. So once Google hired me, I was literally at an event in Mountain View with them. And after the event, we were all sitting at lunch. And one of the executives who was attending, one of the 148 executives we actually did a glass walk for them. We had to do it during the day. And I don't do firewalks during the day. I only do them at night for safety reasons. And I told them we could do a glass walk. And they went, oh, cool. Yeah, let's do that. So they loved the idea of the glass walk. So I'm sitting there at lunch, and one of the executives, a female, she goes, so Dave, we'd like to ask you a question. We're dying to know something. And I said, sure, what's that? And they said, do you know what you have? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, look, what you do, the team building experiences that you offer through your firewalking and glass walking, she goes, let me tell you something. We know, but the demand for this is huge. Corporate America will eat you alive. They said, you have something that, look what you caused. That was an amazing experience that we did today. We'll never forget that. Well, that's what corporate America needs. Every CEO out there, has a very daunting responsibility to keep their people inspired and keep them motivated. How do you do that? Well, I mean, if you get into the personal development industry almost at any level, you're going to learn that what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. You can put a great keynote speaker on stage, and you can take them golfing, or you can take them on a scavenger hunt, or you can have them, maybe build bicycles even and take them out in the community and give them away, whatever you want to do. However, if you don't really physically challenge them, then it's not going to create the change that the nervous system and the body needs to wake you up, to get you to live your life at a higher level. And so I took that to heart. I go, when Google's telling you that you have a marketplace and you're the guy, they're going to hire you like crazy, you should probably listen to them, right? Okay. And so the next thing I know, AJ, I'm at NASA. I'm at Notre Dame. I'm at Virginia Tech. I'm at Remax. I'm at Chick-fil-A, Microsoft, Heineken. Heck, the next thing I know, I'm on the KJ podcast, right? So you just don't know. So it became pretty clear to me as my company was growing, and most of the business that's come to me through all those big companies I just mentioned was organic. Because once they find out that you're Tony Robbins' guy and that you've changed hundreds of thousands of people's lives with these types of paradigm shift experiences, they want to hire you. They want to bring you in, because all they have to do is turn it over to us, right? You let me have your people for 3 hours, put them in a seminar with me, let me get on stage. I'll do the board break and the firewalk with them, that day, and then that evening. And the next day, or, like if we do it on a Saturday, that Monday when they come into work, they're different people. Firewalking, as you may know, has been around 1,000 years. Cultures all over the world have been using it for all types of purposes. The Tahitians, the Hawaiians, the Indo-Europeans, the Polynesians, the people of India. Oh my gosh, they've taken it to a level. You ought to see what people in India do as a rite of passage, ceremonial graduations. It's beautiful. It's, in fact, on my website, I have a picture of a gal. They kind of dug a trench, and looks like all the family and friends are standing around, and they're wearing these beautiful pastel colors, like silks and garments. They're gorgeous, and it looks like a celebration or a graduation of some type. And as she's walking, she's down in it. And so the pit's about this deep. Well, she's not walking on coal sprinkled on grass. She's in a pit, and they're this thick. And she's got 2 newborn babies. She's holding them. And she's got, I think, a flower of something or in her mouth, and she's in. I mean, she's in that pit. She can't get out without going out the other side. And she's got to hold on to those two babies. And they look like they're newborns to me. They only look like they're about a week old, maybe 2 weeks. And if she was to drop one of those babies into that pit, they wouldn't survive. So, that's a little different than sprinkling some coals on grass and walking on those, though it's still a paradigm shift. It's still a very powerful experience. So, right. So a lot of people in the West don't know about any of that. They haven't studied it like Tony has and I have. But yeah, firewalking is literally one of the most transformational experiences that anyone will ever experience.
Right, Dave. So a guy who wanted to move away from that day, when you went with your friend and was almost forced into doing this firewalk with Tony Robbins, is the number one firewalk instructor in America.
Yeah.
So what is it that in short, what is it that you learned that day when you yourself walked on fire? And what is it that you teach corporate America? I know what Google told you, but what is it that you think they try to learn? That only Firewalk can help these leaders, the founders, the top CEOs. And how does it teach about team building? You talked about the Tony Robbins show when people were hugging each other, all people who did not know each other, the next day as if it's like a brotherhood. They know each other now after doing that, achieving that particular thing. So tell us about this. A lot of people across the world may have heard about this, but what it does to you is something you would be the right person. You are the master for today. You are the right person who can tell about what exactly this does. This trial by fire, a lot of people pass through trial by fire in their lives. This will perhaps, help them get through this particular difficult time if there is anything like that, just like it made your life.
Well, I think the first thing you learn is if I can walk on fire that are 1,000 and the coals are 1,000 degrees and not burn myself, what else can I do? What other, because I was lying to myself from the very beginning. Because when my buddy called me that day and said, hey, we're going to be doing a firewalk, I went, oh, no. And I was saying no to something, and I didn't even know what I was saying no to. So how often do we do that? Well, we're people, we're humanistic, so that's going to happen, right? So that's the first lesson. So the paradigm shift for me was, okay, I just walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees. What else can I do? And then when you see the camaraderie of people coming together, having all experienced something so powerful the night before, it's like the light bulb goes off. I got it. It was like, oh my gosh, this is it. What an incredible bond you're going to have with people. Because when people firewalk, and let's say, they're together one night and they have this unbelievable experience, literally one of the most powerful experiences they'll ever have. Well, if you didn't see that person for 5 years, and one day you were at Walmart and you were walking through and you saw them, it's like, oh my gosh, oh God, it's AJ. AJ, how are you, man? It's good to see you. How you been? What's going on in your life? You know what I mean? So the connectivity of that is very powerful. So from anybody that's in a position of having to influence their people or encourage them or bring, help them be better people, right now, because of what happened in March of 2020, it tore people apart. It tore families apart. It's tore businesses apart. And I think any CEO is going to know that if my people aren't working well together, my production's going down, period. And so if your production goes down, guess what else goes with it? Right? So, if production drops and their bottom line drops, then how do you fix that? Well, guess what? You bring them together and you create an experience that brings them back together humanistically. Because COVID, it's like, okay, well, he wears a mask. Well, he doesn't. Well, they don't like each other. Well, he got a vaccine. Well, she didn't. Well, they don't like each other. Well, he loves Donald Trump. Well, she hates Donald Trump. So all this dissension and this disagreement rips you apart. And again, if you're working together and production goes down, well, then you're looking at, the income for the company goes down. And if the CEO doesn't fix it, I mean, it could literally cause the company to go out of business. So again, they can, if they're lucky enough to find me and they got some guts, because it's going to take, they're going to have to step through the fear of going, okay, if this is good enough for Google, NASA, Notre Dame, and Tony Robbins and T.R. Becker and these guys, there must be something to this. So, all they have to do is pick up the phone, get me on the call. And what I do is I custom design the Firewalk for them. Not necessarily Tony Robbins. That was another way of doing it. They may want us to do it in a different way. When I did Firewalks for T.R. Becker, it was ceremonial. He didn't have the rah and all of that. When they walked out to the Firewalk, they were quiet. They weren't even allowed to say anything. And you put them in tribes. It was a very tribal way of doing it. They used to get American Indian chiefs. They would come to my Firewalk and they would bless the area where I built the fire, ceremonial. So that may be a way they want to do it. It was a much more spiritual connection, with a rite of passage, if you will. And let's say the company's launching a new product. All I have to do is find out about their culture. What's their mission statement? What's their vision? What's their outcome? And then between the CEO and the event planner, we'll design the event around exactly what is happening with them. And then we'll take the keynote presentation and create it in and around whatever mission or vision and or message they want us to deliver to their company team. So it's beautifully orchestrated that way. Now, the other thing that's going on, and I've got something for all your listeners, if they'll wait to the end, I'll give them something, a code. So I also was brought to my attention to create what's called the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy. And so what that is, and rather than hiring us to come in and do it, then they'll send an employee or the CEO or the business owner, entrepreneur, or whatever, will come to my event. And then they spend a week with me up here in the beautiful Appalachian Mountains here in the northern part of the state of North Carolina. And I'm going to train them to do what I do. So I'll teach them how to put on a firewalk, how to do the glass walk, how to prepare the glass, how to do the board break, the brick break, the arrow break, the rebar bend, truss fall. I teach them how to create powerful storyline behind the firewalk. And, and then I support them when they go back to their respective companies. And if they can even bring me into the event for like the first one they do, if they want to do that. So they just come to my academy. We take them through everything. It's an unbelievable experience, unlike anything they'll ever go to or attend. And then again, we give them full support after they graduate. So again, at the end, the academy's coming up, by the way, in October of this year. And I keep the academy small. And I do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, intimacy. One-on-one with me. I don't want to fill the room with a bunch of people because then I can't give them the one-on-one attention that they're going to need. And we have some really cool surprises. We put them through some really awesome experiences. And then when they graduate, they are literally certified. So at the end of the show here, AJ, I'll give all your listeners a code. And then when they contact us, if they give us that code, we'll know they got it from your show. And we give them a substantial discount for listening to your podcast here today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Dave. I will certainly let you know when we are coming to the end of this show. So I wanted to understand for the audience, sorry, some bad throat today, cold water. So for the audience, is this firewalk so easy? Because so many people get scared. You wanted to run away, but you were able to do it. So what is the practical part of this firewalk? Second thing is that a lot of these people, Google, NASA, very educated from the scientific background, from the technology background.
Right.
How do they get into their heads that this is something what can change their mind, they change their life altogether, and they have brought it into their system. So help us understand both from the realistic part of this firewalk, and as well as the adoption from companies who believe these things. Earlier,
Yeah.
perhaps earlier in India, if it were done, then people would say, "Oh, this is something uh, much more dangerous and nothing to be gone for and must leave out, because it is connected in one way or the other, maybe with spirituality or religion." So how does the West look at it? How does these people look at it and find such great value into it? How do you help people understand that there is nothing to fear, but at the same time it is not cakewalk, it is firewalk?
Well, what was it? Was it Roosevelt that said we have nothing to fear but fear itself? I think there's a lot of merit to that. So I think everyone needs to decide, because you know what? Here's the fears we don't learn to overcome become our limits. We know that. That's pretty easy to get your mind around that. So you have to decide, what does fear mean to you? The acronym, if you will. Does it mean face everything and rise, or does it mean forget everything and run? So when you can make that flip and you can make that switch, something we say in AA all the time, AJ, is false images appearing real. And that's what it was for me, because, I was saying no to a firewalk and I didn't even know what it was. And so again, for me, I was able to overcome that fear. And once you're able to do that, that's a really powerful moment in anyone's life, because fear's a liar. I mean, really, if you think about it. Now, don't get me wrong. We need fear in our lives because it's there to guide us. But what we don't want fear to become is our jailer. And that's what it is for a lot of people. And so when you can break out of that and become all you can be, then you've learned to deal with fear. And, going forward, and I think that's the number one thing for people, is there's this idea that it's dangerous, that firewalking is dangerous. It's not dangerous. You know what's dangerous? Driving a car on the road. I mean, that's a lot more dangerous. Flying in a plane is more dangerous, and yet we do it. But years ago, Oprah came to the Firewalk, and Oprah was freaking out. She was losing it. I mean, literally. And there was a moment where Tony's got her just before she's ready to Firewalk, and he says to her, "So Oprah, what's the worst that can happen? Burn your feet off and die? Come on. No, that's not going to happen." And it's interesting. If you have kids and they play sports in school, that's a heck of a lot more dangerous than any firewalk you'll ever do with me. Put a kid in soccer, that's dangerous. Put a kid in football, that's dangerous. So we have to, again, it comes down to being honest with yourself. We got to be really careful what we tell ourselves. And I think that, one of the things that I've learned from Tony is a couple things. Everything we do in our life, we run patterns. And I think the story that we tell ourselves about anything is paramount. The story about who we are, the story about who you are, AJ. I mean, look, I'm sure when you first started your podcast, you probably had a lot of fear. You had a lot of doubt. Oh my gosh, will I get listeners? Will I really be able to be of service to people? Will I be able to connect with people? Will they appreciate my message? All these things are questionable. And now look where you are. So at some point you had to step through your own fear to get where you are right now today, because your podcast is up there. You're one of the top rated podcasts, probably not only globally, but certainly in America. So, so look at the reward, because that's it. That's the bottom line. I say all the time, you want to change your life? Change your story. We all have a story, right? Every single thing that happens to us, every good thing, every bad thing, everything in between, we create a story about it. One person, and I think we learned that before I go there, one of the people that taught me a lot about this was Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning, right? The book about his experience in Auschwitz. Talk about fear. And what did he do? He created his own story. And the reason he survived that horrible experience is because his story was, his why, if you will, was, I need to tell the world what happened here. Well, maybe that's how you apply that in your life. I need to tell the world about who I am and my story. I get on stage all the time and I tell everybody what a horrible person I was. I was a drug addict. I was an alcoholic. I was evil. I was mean. I was dangerous. I'm not proud of any of that. However, what it does is it lets people know that I'm willing to shed my story and use it in a vulnerable, powerful way. Because every audience that I talk to, every CEO that I do an event for, I ask them, hey, can I tell my story? And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Because there's going to be somebody in that audience, including your audience right here, right now, that needs my help. Because they have somebody in their life that is suffering from drugs and alcohol, and they don't know what to do. They have no idea. And if you want to help a drug addict, alcoholic, who's the best person to find? You find a recovering alcoholic and drug addict that can come help them, because we understand the consciousness. When we look somebody in the eye and say, hey, I know how you feel, we know how that person feels. So you're congruent. So I think it's the congruency of the whole thing, because that's really what it was for me. I just happened to have the opportunity to be at a Tony Robbins seminar, and I watched it firsthand. I saw what it did. I saw how people reacted. I saw how they were after. And so I knew it worked. There wasn't any question. And now I've seen hundreds of thousands of people. So the one thing I guarantee my client is, look, you hire me, your people are going to be different when I'm done with them. And it's not really me, it's the fire. The fire is always going to do what the fire does. It never, ever, ever disappoints, not once. So again, what's the worst that can happen if you walk on fire? Maybe you get a little blister on your foot. And I do mean a little blister. Are you going to need to go to the hospital? No. Are you going to sue us? No. Right? I've been at this for a long time. Right? So it's not going to happen. And I call them little badges of honor. You get a little blister, right? Well, in a day or 2 days, it's gone. It's literally gone. So it's like, it's a little reminder of what you did. It's okay to have a little scar. Scars aren't bad. I think it's the Japanese, the culture is when they break something, right? Like a vase, right? They put it back together using gold, right? To infuse the pieces together. And when they put something that's broken back together, it's even more beautiful than it in its original shape and form, right? I think humans are the same way. When you can go and heal yourself from the things that happened in your life, it makes you a much more powerful human being. And so again, that's just one of the many benefits that a firewalk can do. I've seen stuff, AJ, that you wouldn't believe. I'll share one thing here, and that is, I do the board break with the firewalk. So I show them a martial arts move. They break a board, show them how to break a board with their bare hands. Well, I have them write some really important information on the board. The first thing I have them write on the front of the board is something they want to move towards, goals or these types of things. Then on the back of the board, I have them write anything they need to get a stop doing, get away from. And then I have them write anybody's name on the board that they're in conflict with. So if there's been abuse or whatever, and whether they hate you or you hate them, or it doesn't matter. Carrying around anger and resentment is not a good thing to do in life. So what I encourage them to do, write their name on the board. It ends tonight. When you break that board and you take that board out there and you offer it to the fire tonight, it's over. And then the other thing that I do is I have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. So then that kind of turns it into a rite of passage. So I believe that becomes ancestral. Now you're inviting your ancestors to the party, if you will, and bringing them into the mix. That's super, super powerful. So now they've got names of people they've lost in their life that they love and they miss. They put people's name on the board that they're in conflict, and restitution and reconciliation shows up for that. Something they want to move towards and something they need to move away from. Take them, boom, they break the board. We take them out, we firewalk them, and then at the end, they get to add that board to the fire. Now, there's another process I take them through that's a proprietary process that they do after that. And once you put all that together, and they leave. And then another thing that we do is my clients, I give them one of these. Now, these are the coals. Those are the coals in there from their firewalk, right? So they get a little container that says, I firewalked in 2023 and I firewalked with XYZ company. And then they have that, they can keep that on their desk or their credenza or whatever. So that way there's a constant reminder sitting in front of them on a regular basis of what they did, what they've accomplished, and who they've become after they broke through those fears using that firewalk experience.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Dave. There is so much to learn from you. This is just one small podcast, but there is so much to learn from you, from what you do, from your company, and now your academy is coming up. So how tell us about the academy part that you wanted to mention.
Yes.
And second thing is that, what is the best way people, individuals can know more about you, and also corporates, if not only just in the US, but also from other places, they can connect with you and get the full benefit or profit from the man that Dave Albin is.
Well, thank you, AJ, for sharing me with your listeners, first of all, and thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a real honor to be here. I know who you are, and I know what a great following you have. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is just go to our website. Everything's there, including the academy. So they go to www.firewalkadventures.com. So Firewalk Adventures is one word. And then when you get to the page at the top, I think it's on the left-hand side, it says the Dave Albin Academy. So when you click on the academy, then that has all the information about the academy coming up October 3rd through the 7th. And so anyone who wants to consider coming to that academy, you get a hold of us there. And the code for that will give you a discount for getting this information and following through on your podcast is 6828. So again, 6828. When you get a hold of us, say, hey, I was on the AJ's podcast, the KJ podcast, and I got a code 6828. We'll know what that means, and then we'll give you a substantial discount for being on your podcast here today.
Wonderful. I'll include all this information on the show notes also, so that more people not about your website, about this all information, so that whoever comes across this information, either in the audio podcast or on YouTube or anywhere else, will be able to know more about all these things.
Quick disclaimer there. I keep the academy small again because for the intimacy. So we only bring in 10 people at a time, for that event, and we're already up to 5. So we're about halfway sold out. So just FYI.
Perfect. At least they will come to know more about what.
Yeah, sure.
And they will.
There's no pressure. We don't do any of that. If you want to come, basically you have to come to me and say, Dave, I want to come. I'm in. How do we make that happen? So that's how we do it. We don't use any sales tactics or pressure. No, we don't want that at all. That's not what we want to attract. We want somebody that comes and looks and goes, all right, I want to do this. I want to take this home, and I want to offer this not only to my company, but I want to offer it to my community, because there's so many things that you can do, with these experiences and with developing your own story. You become a very powerful team building and team bonding extraordinaire.
Absolutely. My last question to you,
yes,
Dave, is now, looking back at the time when you had the gun in your hand, and looking at now, when you decided to give yourself another chance because on compassionate grounds, because of the kids you talked about at that point in time.
Right.
And now you have been in that journey with changing hundreds and thousands of people's lives, including yours, with Tony Robbins. And now you are changing many, many lives. How do you look at this journey? What would you like to tell people who are despondent at whatever stage, fearful for whatever reasons, and find the future bleak? What would you like to tell them?
Well, the first thing I would say is one of the most powerful things any human can do, one of the most intelligent things people can do is when there's despair and a human being needs help, ask for help. It's literally one of the most powerful things any human can do, because not only are you helping yourself, but you're helping the other person who's helping you. And that's how Alcoholics Anonymous works, right? Because, when we get there, we're probably at the lowest part of our lives. And in a very short amount of time, you find that this too shall pass, right? Because no matter, and if I could learn anything, that would be one of them. And that is really, I heard a college coach one time say something, because they won a game one time that they weren't supposed to win. The odds of them winning were way against them, and they won. And then they were supposed to beat another team, and they lost. And so the coach said, life is never as good as it seems. Life is never as bad as it seems. Reality is probably somewhere in the middle. And I think one of the most powerful sayings out there is, this too shall pass. No matter what's going on in your life, good or bad, this too shall pass. Give it time. And recognize that if you'll allow somebody to help you through any hard time that you're going through, there's always a way out. You'll find a way. And again, I think it really comes down to most people. When you get to that point where you want to take your life because the pain's so bad, that's a rough place. I know, it's really scary. It's a scary place. It's a lonely place. And I think a lot of people get to a point where they just don't believe that there's any help out there. And that's not true. So you're lying to yourself. There's lots of people out there that will help you. There's suicide hotline. Just go talk to somebody and realize that if you do take your own life, you're killing everybody around you as well. So find the compassion, if you will. Like you said, AJ, I found that compassion, because I knew that those 3 kids that were my stepkids in my family at the time, if I was to have taken my own life, that would have been a horrible, horrible thing for them. They would have lived with that for the rest of their lives. So just find the love. Love always wins, right? And just reach out for help. And the last thing I'll say is, stop looking for heroes and be one.
Stop looking for heroes, be your own hero. And also that there is always a way. Yes. And some ways you have to find through a firewalk. And that will show you the way for the rest of your life. On this note, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.